So Kevin, this is going to be fun. We had a chance to connect and hang out a little bit with your boy McVay and a bunch of other incredible coaches and people at our friend John Gordon's event in Ponte Vedra. So thanks for taking time to do this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this, and the fact that you were able to have the impact on me that you did down in Florida at John's event. Well, I was sitting next to Sean, and obviously when you're sitting next to Sean, it's almost hard sometimes to acknowledge anybody else for that matter. But you certainly left a heck of an impression on me, and I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, well, that's kind of you to say. As I am of yours. And, your leadership and style and character and values is so impressive. And as I prepared for this, I was sort of digging in, and your dad, which I didn't know when we were together, was an FBI agent, which I think is really interesting because that's sort of not everywhere we turn, right? How did that shape you as a young boy and as you grew up?
Yeah, I think there's two layers to it, right? As when I was growing up and I was young, he worked a lot, but yet he was always around. Like, I don't really remember, I remember some times when you really, really think back on it. Oh, wait, he was gone for that 2 weeks, or he was gone, or he did come home late, some nights, working as hard as he did. And,
sure.
But yet he was always around, and he was always there for me. And I'm always taken back by that now that I have this job where, unless you're wildly intentional, it can get away from you just from a standpoint of just the time commitment, especially during the season, that you have to make in this profession, and the total, commitment to give yourself to everybody around, in a role of a servant leader, if I may even attempt to call myself that. It is a 24/7 requirement to be available, to be committed to others in a way that is real and consistent. But I think back on my dad and his job and his journey, and my mom for that matter as well. She was a teacher and an educator for her whole career, and had an impact on so many young folks. But just how they were always there, those critical conversations, those moments where maybe I did something wrong, and I, maybe I broke a rule, maybe I made a mistake, and there was always growth because they were always there. And I think that's so incredibly impactful for all young people to have, hopefully their parents, but even other mentors and other folks around to be there. And that was always impactful for me. But looking back on it now as well, being able to ask some of those questions, okay, what exactly, were you doing? And he's able to share a lot of those things now, and you just hear about how exciting and how impactful he was in his career, and helped others and kept others safe, and did things that are truly inspiring.
What did you learn, and how did that, because he sort of worked a lot, he had a demanding job you can relate to for sure. What do you think he did that maybe we can learn from people who want alignment and want to pour into our families, but also want to thrive professionally? What did you learn from him that you take into your life today to sort of have that same level of presence with your family, your wife, your children?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think we all, anybody out there who's passionate about their career, passionate about growing in their career, I think we all can learn the ability to kind of compartmentalize, can be totally and completely present in one job for others, and growing in that job, and growing in your skills, growing in and developing in what you do, but at the same time be able to, unplug and plug back into what I think we all would say is the most important thing, which is family. And, for me, it's being a great husband and being a great father to 4 kids. And I had a great example on how to do that. And then ultimately, committing to the fact that it's okay. It's okay sometimes. And I need to take this advice more so than I probably do, but it's okay to, put it away, put it down for a second, and make sure you're totally, completely present for your loved ones, And they may be proud of me. They may think it's exciting that I'm an NFL head coach, or especially my kids, they may think it's really cool that Dad, we get to go to Vikings games and stand on the sideline before the games. But it better be hopefully way more than that, the impact that I want to have on their lives.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I can imagine that influenced you in incredible ways, which is so powerful and cool, because I think even at some level, Kevin, and we've talked about this, that the awareness around the need to be present at home, present with your family, while also driving hard in an incredibly demanding job. I mean, even at the highest level, the awareness alone is so essential, and I think sometimes missed. And it's so, it always just inspired me, that level of awareness that you have around that, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
It's awesome. And so I the other thing that I think is remarkably, as I think about Kevin the person, right, who now is a head coach in the NFL, obviously, but as a player, I mean, you played for 5 different teams over
in 5 years. Yeah.
In 5 seasons. I know. I mean, that's a lot of change, dude. And in a lot of locker rooms, a lot of different coaches. What was your approach, right? Like when you're walking into those moments, into those locker rooms for the first time, walking into that change, how did you approach it? Because that is an enormous level of complexity at some level, and we live in a world where there is so much change, and people, I think, outside of sports have it is a very challenging thing for people. You did it obviously at a really high level.
I think the first thing that I look back on is the awareness level to understand kind of where your feet are at that moment of, it's another challenge, and having a lifelong dream of being an NFL quarterback and hopefully being a starting quarterback and being a successful one. And we all have those hopes and those dreams, and that's great. But along the journey, if you're so focused on that, and whether it's the successes or in many cases in my playing career, maybe not having it go the way that I wanted it to go, there was opportunity, throughout that whole journey, opportunity like being around some unbelievable coaches, like you mentioned, different coaches, different styles of position coaches, coordinators. My first head coach in the National Football League was Bill Belichick, who, may be the greatest head coach of all time. And he was totally different that when I spent the next 3 years with the New York Jets, than Rex Ryan.
Right.
But, very impactful and very successful in their own rights, being authentic and being truly themselves and that same person every single day. And that had a tremendous impact on me, because it showed me that there's no one way to do it. There's your way. And it better be the way you're most comfortable in that setting, because inevitably we're not always going to be comfortable in these jobs. So if you're trying to be somebody that you're not, and then adversity hits, I couldn't imagine trying to live in that world where you're trying to lead in a way that is authentic to you, but you're doing it in a way where you're, if you're not authentic, you're trying to be somebody else. And that's when that imposter word can start to creep in of, who do I need to be today to meet the requirements or meet the circumstances, which are inevitably going to be difficult at times. It's almost impossible to be in a leadership role and truly thrive like that. But the other aspect of it, beyond just learning leadership styles and learning about the game of football at a really high level from a lot of different great coaches that I was around, were those teammates in the locker room. So many, the first quarterback room I walked into, Tom Brady sat in the chair right next to me.
Wow.
And then, throughout that journey, being around different players at different points in their own personal journey, not just in the quarterback room, but throughout the whole team, and realizing, when you look back on it and you have conversations with some of those guys, they say it's not a surprise that we've seen you have success as a coach and in your style of doing it, because you were like that as a player, a teammate. You were a great friend. You listened, you were there. I remember you being there for me when moments were difficult, and even if it wasn't always reciprocated, it didn't matter, because it was what I thought was the best way for me to have a positive impact on the teams that I was on. And as I walked into new locker rooms, the awareness to maximize that opportunity, the unbelievable blessing to be on an NFL team for however long that may be. Every single day is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to write things down, take great notes, look back on great things people said. And it's not always positive. Maybe it was sometimes where you look back on it and you say, if that was handled differently, or if, how could I have been better if this was different or that was different? You take it all in because it's all experience, and all experience matters, in my opinion. Good, bad, positive, negative. If you can build up the ability to, have personal strength and confidence, and total comfort with who you are as a perfect person, I think people accept that, and they can see that, and that is a big quality to have, to walk through any door with that as a consistent part of who you are. Obviously, other things matter: competency, your ability to communicate, your ability to hold up your end of the bargain in any relationship, professionally or personally, is important. But at least that nature of being the same person every day, and striving to help others, and striving to see the good in every opportunity, it set a great foundation for me to inevitably get into the coaching profession, because I kind of felt like I was doing a lot of the things, even not as a coach, that would translate and have translated for me to be the best coach that I can be personally. And that might be different for others, but I think a lot of those principles can carry on.
Well, 100%. I mean, it's almost as if inside of those 5 seasons you were coaching. They often say, I think a player coach team is better than a coach led
Absolutely.
team.
Yep.
How did you get comfortable owning your role and owning the ability to be exactly who you were? Because it can be hard. I mean, what did you find yourself sort of realizing, wait a minute, actually everybody really just wants me to be me, and that's okay? Because how did you get comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think, and looking back on it, there may have been moments where that was a detriment to maybe me, finding every edge, and finding a direct path to maybe realizing that direct goal, if it was meant to be at all, of maybe being the best player that I could be. But I think that it circles back to I started to learn that I'm most comfortable and I'm most serviceable to others by being myself, and you'll never go wrong treating people with respect. You'll never go wrong having a smile on your face, and although you're serious about attacking your job as if you are the starting quarterback, you are the most important player on any team you were ever on. I wasn't, and that didn't matter to me, because I was going to find a way to have an impact, to leave a positive, leave everybody better than they were before maybe an interaction, or before they were a teammate of mine. And whether that happened or not, that wasn't up to me. What I can control is trying to be the best version of myself, whatever that meant, every single day. And it's hard. There was many days where I fell short of that goal. But along the way, along that journey, selfishly, you start feeling something within yourself, and it's this positivity that kind of a flame, gets lit inside of you, that it can be addicting to, to truly do things for reasons that maybe aren't totally and completely selfish to help you get to your own personal goal, but you might see a teammate realize that success. You might see you might see a teammate maybe overcome some adversity off the field that you had a hand in, maybe a conversation at lunch or in the locker room, whatever it is. And you start to realize that, impact comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes and forms. And it all matters. Everything matters. All little things matter. And, it breeds to a place where you feel like when you do get into a leadership role, whether it's running a position room as a quarterback coach, or running a side of the ball as an offensive coordinator, or now getting a chance to be a pillar of the leadership of this team, your impact and your net just grows wider and wider, but the principles still stay the same.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, that's a heck of an opportunity. I mean, some of those reps, right, in a way, as that guy beside Brady, behind Brady. I'm curious, and others, Belichick. You know, I would imagine the stories and the learnings and the moments and the things that you learn, but also probably I would imagine the things that you maybe unlearned, in part as you own Kevin, who is his own guy and his own coach and his own leader. I'm curious, like. What did you notice about Brady as a teammate that might surprise people?
Well, the work ethic, the how important it was to him to continuously strive to be great at what he did, and it wasn't like he was trying to be great. He was trying to beat the version of himself from the previous day. He was competing in many ways. At that point, he had won Super Bowls. At that point, he was a larger than life figure in the world, really. And you still saw a guy that attacked every single day, competing against something, even if it wasn't someone. You still saw somebody doing that. But at the same time, those moments, and I still, I've become closer to him probably now than I was then. And cool. What you still realize is that relationships matter to him. Teammates matter, people matter. And in an effort to be great and as an individual player and the greatest quarterback of all time, he was also aware enough to know that all of his teammates and them being able to strive to be great and sometimes pushing those guys to try to be better versions of themselves, as a really impactful teammate that he was. He knew along the line the ultimate goal of winning championships would be the byproduct of all that by everybody, in many ways having their floor elevated, even though his ceiling was so high and continued to be throughout the rest of his career. It wasn't just about him. He brought a lot of people along with him. Is probably what I took the most away from him.
How were some of the ways that he did that? Beyond the actions and the discipline and the work ethic and all the sort of things people would see.
Yeah, there's the cliches that were absolutely true. The first guy in, the routine, the consistency at which he approached every single day. But I'm the perfect example of it. I was around him for a little less than 2 years, and why would he form a unique relationship with me? I was one of many teammates over a very, very long career that he had. But yet, whether it was when I was in my early years of coaching and he was still playing, I would see him, and it would feel like it mattered to him to say hello and ask how I was doing, and cool. Make sure that it was a genuine conversation, and that holds up to this very day. When we speak on the phone or when he's broadcasting, one of our games, or we get a chance to connect. It just feels so genuine, and it just feels like it matters, and it feels like you feel like you were a part of his journey in a lot of ways, even though I have no right to feel like that. It's just one of the many quarterbacks that I've shared the quarterback room with him.
You're humble. I'm sure you were. I think the funniest story was what you shared when you got to Foxborough, and you get to the locker room, and it's like Brady's kind of not feeling it. Castle's not feeling it, and they're like, "Dude, you're our quarterback taking snaps today." And that was a pretty funny story, man. I mean, you sort of got thrown into the mix in a hot second, really not knowing any of the plays coming right out of San Diego, right?
Yeah, that story sticks with, I can't tell you how many quarterbacks that I've coached over the years that I share that story, because I think in a lot of ways it kind of disarms the need to be perfect in front of this coach, and just it disarms this. Because in many ways quarterbacks are leaders of football teams. Sure. Whether you're the starter, you're the backup, or you're a young guy just on the practice squad, you have your own platform within the team as a quarterback on any team to have an impact on some of your teammates. So I'm constantly trying to get guys to just understand the best way to lead is with all the things that got you here, that hard work, that ability to strive to do whatever it takes to be the best version of yourself, but also doing it in an authentic way where your teammates know I know that guy. I know that guy. I know how hard he works. I trust him because I know he's the same guy every day. I know he can deal with adversity because I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. And being a great teammate is a skill. It's not just I've had some of the greatest teammates that I've ever been around, some fellow coaches I've been around, Sean McVay being one of them,
Sure.
that, it's an acquired skill over many, many years and in many, circumstances, and learning from the things you handled well, learning from the things you could have handled better. And you feel that when you come across unique individuals that, hopefully can, then just grow and have that same kind of impact on others.
What do you think some of those skills are, right? When you think about the skills of a great leader who, by the way, I think it's interesting what you said, because in part it's sort of leading without maybe authority, right? Like it's you're not the guy, the one, but I think for so many leaders in the world today, right, it's helping get their teams to feel like they own it, to lead like it's theirs. And I think you as a leader aren't one to do it from a place of authority as much as a place of helping them buy in and own it. What are some of the ways tactically that you've done that?
Well, I think first and foremost, I do believe wholeheartedly that player-driven teams, not necessarily player-run, it's not one of those things where you just totally turn a blind eye and there's no accountability and there's no ownership is from a player, and a player-driven culture is about getting them to understand the importance of it. It's about getting them to understand the healthy principles of successful teams and corporations, and any, no team or corporation or group of people have ever accomplished anything noteworthy without having a great culture. And even and that doesn't mean they're all the same. They're all unique. They're all different because we're all unique and we're all different.
Right.
But when you collectively bring a group of people together, and the locker room is the number one place, I think there are so many lessons people in society, in great scale could learn just by, being fortunate enough to, witness, be present in an NFL locker room.
Yeah.
People from all different, we have 21-year-old players. We've had 36, 37, 38-year-old players. And they may be in a locker right next to each other.
Right.
And they may come from totally different backgrounds, family dynamics, parts of the country, different colleges, different opportunities, different landscapes, that none of those things matter is if the price of admission is caring about one another and pouring into those relationships. And I think that's kind of the number one thing would be a player-driven culture is driven by love, and it's driven by relationships between each other, so that there's a collective ownership of the team. Because there's two things, right? When you feel ownership, and then the other aspect of that that's really important for every player, whether you're Tom Brady or Kevin O'Connell at the bottom of the roster, is feeling a sense of belonging. When you feel ownership and you feel a sense of belonging, you start to feel like even your small impact, your small interactions, your small presence, however large or small that may be, it matters. And feeling like you matter is like the number one performance enhancer for anybody. And it's easier said than done for some versus others based upon your statistical impact or your role on the team. But when you can generate a world where everybody feels like they matter, they start to have ownership, and they start to feel the ebbs and flows of a season and the adversity that comes. They're much, much more willing to attack it. In many ways, I talk to our team all the time about our way. And our way, when you take the field on Sundays, in many ways you're protecting and you're defending your way of doing things, because although, especially in the NFL, results define everything, and futures and things like that. But the process that goes before that and what's been built that you can really lean on in those moments of adversity will help you get through the storm, will help you weather a 4-8 start like we had this year and finishing 9-8. And we didn't get in the playoffs. There was no reward. There was no There was nothing else that other than caring about one another and caring about what we were doing every single day. And it was honestly one of the, it's hard to say that it's as impactful as any season you've had when you've been a part of a Super Bowl with the Rams, or, a 13 win and a 14 win season here in Minnesota. It's hard to say it, but it's true that it was as impactful because when things were tested the most, and it would have been so easy, right, to just hit that easy button in the corner of the room and tap out in many ways. Our players didn't. They leaned in even more, and they did it for one another with nothing else to gain but to be there for the person next to them. And that's culture in my mind, whether it plays to the social media crowd or the pundits that want to tell all of these players and myself and all of our coaches on a daily basis, you're either the best or you're the worst, and there's nothing in between. Well, I'll tell you what's in between. Those relationships and that dynamic in that locker room that can stand, that can take that heavy burden on our shoulders and handle things the right way, because you know what? We'll come out of it better and more prepared on the backside of that to go attack whatever's next in our future.
What do you do as a leader, right, when we think about quote unquote underperformance? How do you hold people accountable to that without, in a way, and maybe they are doing it to one another, maybe the locker room is doing it to one another, but you as a leader holding them accountable with love and transparency and guidance and all of that, and not and sustaining the confidence that they need to recover and to show up consistently.
Well, I think
that tightrope can be interesting, I think, as a leader.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, great teams need standards, and they need goals, and they need, and really your standards and what you're willing to commit to as far as a standard will lead to inevitably chasing goals. I always find it interesting when people say the goal is a world championship. Okay, great. Like, that's 31 other teams in our league, in maybe the league filled with the most, ability for teams to be on an even playing field in any professional sports league because of the rules, the salary cap, the way our draft works, the way teams, the difficulty in sustaining year in and year out. You need those standards because you can't hold people accountable and hold each other accountable to standards or to anything unless you have those standards to really be able to gauge and judge and really feel on a day-to-day basis, a minute-to-minute basis, whether it's a practice, a walkthrough, a meeting, what they do, the interactions they have in the cafeteria. It could be in the weight room, how they're pushing each other. If there's standards and a standard of what we're trying to accomplish that's in alignment with the goals that we have, then you at least have a roadmap. Then you at least have tangible things that you can have checkpoints on throughout the journey. But the second part of it as a leader for me, I learned it really, where I learned it the most was with Sean McVay in LA. Okay. You got to look inward first. You got to be willing to, have the security and to be sincere and stand in front of a group of people and tell them, I didn't do a very good job. I didn't do a good enough job. Put this one on me, but I can promise you there's nothing about me that is deflated or feels broken or feels like I don't know the path to success. So just know this, I'm acknowledging first and foremost that I didn't meet the standard. I fell short of that line. But know this, tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to be ready to attack it. And you're going to get everything I have to make sure we are right back above that line, regardless of circumstance, regardless of outcome. And then you do that enough, and you hope that your players do that, your coaches do that, and they look inward. And then it's way easier to look inward first and be critical and be the most critical of yourself, not reaching that standard, than it is to point fingers and look around the room at what that player didn't do. Because once everybody does that first, then it becomes easy to take coaching, to give coaching, to accept where we are in that current moment as a team and where we need to get to. And I never really understood it. It always used to drive me crazy in Los Angeles because every time we won, it was always about everybody else. It was always about the team. And I
Uh-huh.
love that about Sean. But what I've come to learn the most was when we lost, both privately and publicly for that matter,
Uh-huh.
um, it was about him, and it was about how he didn't do a good enough job, and
Mm.
how he's going to make sure that he's better for the greater good of the group. And there were times where I totally disagreed with him. I thought he coached a great game.
Wow.
I
But he
thought,
fall on the sword.
yeah, and what I've learned is he didn't look at it like falling on the sword. He looked at it like it was the number one path, for everybody to drop their insecurities,
Yes.
acknowledge what was true, and be a truth teller in that moment about myself, which will ultimately allow our team to then do that and process the result that didn't go our way, but
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, have a direct path to achieving the success we want to go achieve. And it's not going to come from hoping. It's not going to come from anything other than stepping forward, stepping
Mm-hmm.
in even
Mm-hmm.
further, putting in the work. And when that next result comes and it does go your way, it's that much more powerful.
So, am I hearing you say that like Sean would sort of take that, own that mistake, so that he could create a safe place in a locker room to unpack progress forward? Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what it is. It's about creating an environment
Yeah.
where, and that's also not holding people. It's not like you're just turning a blind eye.
Right. Right.
All that is the starting point
Yeah.
that then will allow pretty fertile ground for everybody to have
Mm-hmm.
growth. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember, if you've got the culture built where everyone matters and everything matters, and people feel a sense of belonging and ownership, when the leader then says, I didn't do a good enough job, but trust me when I tell you this, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I
Mm-hmm.
do, not only the next time, but starting right now is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the path. Your players start to feel that. And
Yeah.
within a player driven team, there's leadership on that team. And the dynamic of your leaders of that team then carrying that same type of mentality will only trickle down to the rest of your team. And there's always going to be parts of it, especially in this day and age when all guys need to do is come in from a game. You lose a
Yeah.
game, you walk through the locker room, you're going to see guys flip their phones out and they're scrolling on their phone and reading about how terrible we are and how we let everybody down. And those things can be true,
Mm-hmm.
but what also can be true is what we're going to do about it, and,
Right.
and how you go about doing that in any aspect of life is
Yeah.
maybe the most important thing is the
Yeah.
response to adversity, to the results not going your way. And it can sound like coach speak at times. And I'm sure many people that hear me say a lot of the things that I do that aren't around me every single day, that don't hear the consistency of the
Mm-hmm.
message within the walls of our building, might think about it like, oh, that's just another example of a coach saying some coach speak that he read in a book somewhere, until they're actually in our building and until they've
Mm-hmm.
actually heard the messaging day in and day out, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, the
Mm-hmm.
empowering of coaches and players, and then ultimately being able to lean against that culture and lean into that where everybody feels like no matter what, we're always pulling the rope in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that is such an interesting. Oh, my guys will cut this. I was like, gosh, Kevin, I just lost my train of thought. I was thinking about, um, what does? Oh, I know what I was going to share, and my team will cut this out. But I remember when we had dinner that night, and Dabo said, "Boats don't sink from the water around it; it sinks from the water that gets in it."
Yep.
And, when I was an agent, I used to just tell my guys, don't read the paper, right? Like that's how old, but it's not that way anymore.
No.
How do you help? I mean, and what we take in is so essential to the thoughts that we have, to the way that we show up, to who we are at home, at work. How do you try to coach these guys to be disciplined about what they consume, because the impact that it can have can be incredible, but it's also so much noise. And I know you've probably got practices that you live into too, because the noise it's insane and it can paralyze us from being our
Yeah,
best.
I remember walking in the door every day in New England. There were five principles that the New England Patriots lived by under Coach Belichick, And one of those in big bold letters said, "Ignore the noise." And back then, believe it or not, I'm talking 2008, 2009. I didn't have social media at the time. That was still a time when Facebook, you needed I think an EDU address, email address to have it. So it was still what was on the television and what was in the newspaper that you had to ignore.
Right.
Ignore
It was
the noise.
easier.
I talk to our team all the time about ignoring the noise, but I think you can't ignore that it's out there. You can't ignore the fact. You can't just say, "Hey guys, at the beginning of the year, ignore the noise." And that's why nowadays you have to be willing to get into the depths of it. Of, hey, what is the noise about our team? It might be a conversation with a player. What is that noise? Acknowledge it, diffuse it. And then, you can't make it your sole purpose to prove that wrong, but it can certainly be part of your motivation, but it can't be the driving force behind that motivation. And that's when you have to walk that fine line, because there's no rule that says the negativity will stop. There's no rule that says that the water will not keep filling the boat, right? And so the best thing you can possibly do is have the principles to your organization be something that the players can rely on in those moments. They can rely on each other in those moments to get through that turmoil together. But it is a slippery slope in this day and age, because you can pull your phone out of your pocket, click on an app, and have a direct source of negativity, and negativity can come after the positives too. Like, hey, this team is good, but are they really that good? This team is, and the days of it's us against the world, it's much more. It has much more depth to it than that, and it's, and you've got to find different ways to categorize it too. You've got to be willing to maybe use some endearing words that could be cataloged as inappropriate. You got to be willing to be real. You got to be yourself when you do it, but you got to be willing to put yourself not only in somebody's shoes, but go ahead and stand in your own shoes right next to them, side by side, and make sure that they're not dealing with those things together. And you're always trying to tell them to ignore the noise. You're always trying to tell them to maybe go social media dark. If it will help you maintain your focus. But it's a challenge, because especially with the younger player of today, because they've grown up with it. They've grown up being, in many cases, that 4 or 5 star recruit that loses a high school game, and in maybe a much more minimal version, but they still were, unable to get away from the fact that somebody out there was telling them, "You stink, you're terrible, you're the worst, you should quit, you should." In many cases nowadays, you hear much worse than that. But you also have to be able to understand what it is and treat it for what it is, which is nothing that can be impactful on what we've built if we've built it the right way. And that we hopefully turns into an individual's approach to it as well, if they're around it enough.
With standards and ownership inside of, what are some of the ways tactically that you live into those as a team, as a culture, and as a leader? Like, what are some of the daily behaviors, daily activities, or, pre-game, post-game, that allow you to live into those standards with accountability, with love, both inside of wins, inside of losses, inside of good days, challenging days? Tactically, what does that look like?
Well, I think it starts in the off season. Whether it's talking about culture or more importantly, talking about things like a football philosophy. What do we want to be? Tangible things. What do we want to be as a football team that we think will help us win games? And it's amazing how many times you can go back to that philosophy and find your shortcomings, find your missteps, to where if you just would have done this, or maybe most importantly, not done these things, would you have had a different result? And that's talking about that. That's introducing it. That's showing examples throughout the off season, building into a season. So then you can be constantly circling back on that messaging, so that in many ways, it tells the story itself before you even have the meeting. Guys, if you ask that, hey, somebody raise their hand and tell me, a reason why we might have fell short this week. And that's that ability to farm that accountability, because our standards of, not turning the ball over, our standards of playing with great effort, our standards of being great in situational football, our standards of being a fundamentally sound team, those things tie directly into practice, to working on your craft, to doing the extra things required to grow. That's on an individual basis. And then on a team basis, the unique thing about our league is every single week is a new challenge. So I like to start out the week on Wednesdays, making sure everybody knows what I think it's going to be required out of our team, real tangible individual things before we've hit the field to practice that week of what it's going to take to win a game. I learned that from Sean. He used to have the What It Takes meeting in LA, and I carried that over here.
That's cool.
Because I think it's important to set the table every single week, set the plan as a team, and you do it in all three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. But then you always circle it back to how it's going to be a requirement that we do all these things collectively as a team, and maybe have to pick each other up a little bit. It might be the offense picking up the defense, or in many ways last year for our team, it was the defense picking up the offense, and understanding that that's a responsibility, not to point your finger and say, you guys are the reason we lost, or we're the reason we won. No, how about, hey, we're the reason we captured the momentum in the game by doing this, this, and this when our team needed it the most. Or, hey, on this given day, this circumstances of our team versus that team, this was going to be a huge part of giving us a chance to win. And we did those things, and maybe certain other aspects of the game plan didn't go as planned or weren't as successful, or maybe there was other adversity, that whether it's injury or whatever it may be, that certain other areas of your team were dealing with. Well, other areas of the team can now know they have clarity on how we step up and we do more. And I think that do more instead of they didn't do enough is what winning teams do.
That's awesome. The positive, obviously, side of it. You talk about Sean, awesome. He's the best. And was there something that you took from Belichick, Kevin, that you deploy now as a leader, as a head coach?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that he was a master of was, in his own way, maybe not the way I would do it, because, authentically I have to be myself, but holding people accountable, on a daily basis, whether it was a practice in an OTA or a mini camp in the spring, where there was no score being kept, there was no, there was no media in the locker room after a win or a loss. It was more about understanding we're not playing for that. That is the byproduct of how we are preparing, and that everything matters. And figuring out ways to do that, and in some cases being critical of guys in the group setting. But what I thought he was a master at was, and I don't think a lot of people have talked about this unless you really talk to some of the people that played for him for either a long time or throughout his coaching journey. He always found the way. It might have been, in New England, we would have to walk out to the practice fields. The facility was in the stadium. You had to walk through the tunnel, up some stairs, up to the practice field. And it was a 4 or 5 minute walk, whatever it was. But he always found, and I can remember vividly 3 or 4 times where he did it with me, of even though he might have been critical of something I did wrong or something I didn't do well, you'd find him walking back to the locker room, and there he'd be. And it might be in the one-on-one setting, and it would be, a reminder maybe of what you didn't do well, but then there would be encouragement. Then there would be, this is how you're going to improve, and give you not only, the fact that we didn't meet the standard and the accountability side of things, but then coaching is helping people reach the success and reach their the path that will ultimately help the team collectively when you individually have that impact on players. And he had that way of doing it that was unique to him. And you didn't even really know he was doing it in the moment. I'm sure he did. But that one-on-one connection that he, either followed up from holding you accountable in a more team-based setting, or it could have been something even larger scale than that when it was clear in a game, something didn't go your way, and
Right.
it might have been in your mind the reason why the team lost. He was going to find a way to A, hold you accountable, but B, provide you with a path and encouragement to go improve and find that success.
So he would almost, like you're walking this 4 or 5 minute walk, would he almost sort of, hey, Kev, come on, and pull you back to the locker room one on one?
Well, it might not even be it might have been, you're just walking and all of a sudden there he is. And
Okay.
a
You're like,
conversation, a conversation starts, or maybe it was early in the morning.
Okay.
He
He'd
used
come
to walk
find
on
you.
the treadmill and read all the articles and read, scouting reports. He'd be walking on the treadmill and you'd be in there working out. And it would just so happen to be a coincidence that you finished right when he did and you're walking out of the locker room. A quick conversation happens and all of a sudden you felt this energy and you felt empowered to attack the day. And that's how I took it. And looking back on it now in the role that I'm in now, I viewed it as incredibly purposeful and skilled the way he was able to do that.
That's powerful. So, one last question, then I'm going to hit you with rapid fire, and then you got to hop. I know. So, with so much coming at you personally, professionally, and I talk about this often at events, but controlling the controllables, being fully present, I think is some of the best presence we can give people. And you said it earlier, right? Being where our feet are, being truly where they are. How do you do that, Kevin? Like, to really be present inside of a lot of demand, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest challenges, and there's some moments where either you haven't slept a whole lot, you've been grinding, doing everything you can to come up with a great game plan or figure out a path to winning a game, that you can lose sight sometimes of just that. Remembering the important part of the two things that matter to you. I want people to say that I was authentic and that I had empathy for others. That's what the two foundational things that I want to be as a coach. And when you think about what that means, it's being the same person every single day, being who you are and being comfortable being that person. And then the second part of that is empathy is how your words are received by somebody else. And that's not always positive. That's not always negative. That's everything. And when you're speaking to a whole team or a collective coaching staff, you have to be thoughtful. You have to be tactful about how you do those things. But if the requirement every day is to try to make another human being, either a player, a coach, or anybody else, leave them better than you found them, help them be the best version of themselves, help them become somebody who can be at their best when it's required, that's a powerful thing. And it's something that if it means something to you, circumstances shouldn't matter. That should be the foundation of who you are and what you are. And I need to be the first one to tell you, I fall short at that all the time, but not without that awareness word. And I thought that was great. You started, we talked about that minutes ago, about that awareness word is the most important thing, is having the awareness of self, and not allowing the pressures and the negativity and things to allow those things to fill the void of what gets created throughout the trials and tribulations of a season. You better be filling that with continued presence of doing what you said you would do when you committed to this profession, which is helping people reach their potential.
I love it. That's a good spot to wrap. So I'm going to hit you with a couple really quick rapid fires. What's one word players would use to describe you?
I would hope authentic.
I love it. What is something people sometimes get wrong about you?
That I'm a happy-go-lucky. Everybody's just smiling and constantly. I think the same people that would say that I'm authentic. If you talk to Justin Jefferson or you talk to some other players who I have unbelievable relationships with, they would tell you there's another side.
There's got to be, man.
Into our organization, and you have to have that.
100%.
You have to have that.
100%. If you weren't coaching, what do you think you'd be doing?
I think I would probably, realistically, I'd probably be broadcasting football. I did that when I first got done, and I found a passion in it. I
Hmm.
enjoyed doing that. But I still think I would be finding a way to do something. When I was doing that, I was training quarterbacks, working with high school and college
Hmm.
quarterbacks, getting ready
Yeah.
for the draft.
Yeah.
I was able to still get that fix of being on the grass,
Yeah.
to help somebody play this game.
Yeah, for sure. What's a daily habit or ritual that has made you better?
Well, I think I do try to always have some element of scripture
Hmm.
in my life. I'm a
Hmm.
faith-based person, and whether
Sure.
it's a daily devotional or spending some time reading the Bible, I think that's such a powerful thing for me,
Sure.
and I think it can be for everyone. But the other side of that is Alex Smith taught me when I was coaching him in Washington. He taught me about the 12-hour fast or
Oh
16-hour,
yeah.
whatever it was. So
Yeah.
now the only thing I have until about noon every single day, give or take a couple days here and there, I would say a cup of black coffee, but I'm up to a few more than just a single cup these days.
Hey, that fasting, it's money. It is a game changer. So who or what is a game changer? Who inspires you and why?
I would say a really simple one, and not just because it's Valentine's Day very soon, but my wife.
That's awesome.
No, hey, you talk to any great coach, they have an incredible support system, and I feel an obligation to try to be great and let everybody else figure out if that's true or not because of the sacrifice that my wife Leah makes. We have four unbelievable children. She
Yeah.
is the most energetic, somehow finds time for everybody,
Wow.
and cares about everybody so much and in such a selfless way. She is just an absolute rock star.
That's awesome.
So I feel an obligation to hopefully come to work every day. If I'm not going to be attempting to try to do what she does, which I could not do, I better hope to have some kind of success doing what I do here because I know when I go home, I'm
Yeah.
essentially her fifth child.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
empty the
exactly.
dishwasher, man. Let's go. 100%. Well, we're going to make sure we clip that last part and get that to her. Okay.
Please, please
With a
do.
dozen roses, and we rock that. Hey, Kevin, so fun to be with you. So good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Like I said, Molly, I've been looking forward to it. Big fan of yours, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah, I would love it. Thanks so much.